diving. Hope comes and stops us in our tracks. Bravely we prove in our striving, trudging together each day. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Hey everyone, and welcome to today's session of Raw Recovery with Dion. Today I have a friend on that I met back in November while I was going through training to become a recovery coach, and we got to spend a lot of time together during the week and do some role playing, which was fairly uncomfortable, but we got to know each other. And we've been able to talk since November, but not really sit down and talk. So I'm really looking forward to hearing Gabe's story, because I haven't been able to hear the full story, just little bits and pieces, which has just been like the carrot in front of the horse. So, Gabe, thanks for coming on. Thanks for being a part, willing to tell your story. Welcome to the show.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure, Dion. Always. And yeah, I felt that that same connection when we were doing the C-car training. First time I ever did anything like that, and it was therapeutic in itself. And now I'm recommending it to some of my highly functional and motivated clients.
It was the first thing that I did after all my anxiety stuff. So last November, I decided I'm going to get out of the house and I'm going to go in front of other people and get out of this anxiety that I'm going through and take a chance.
Oh, and
wow. I know a lot of people didn't know I was going through that, but the group made me feel wanted, and it felt good. So that's why I feel like, I feel there's an emotional attachment for me for people in that class. Whether I see them again or not, or whether we get along or not, I still have that emotional gratitude, I guess you would say. So when I see you guys, brings me back to that, hey, when you utilize a group of people to help you overcome something, it's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Man.
It's a special thing. That's really interesting that you said that. I remember you had mentioned something about some of the things that you were going through. But yeah, like you said in the introduction, we spent some time together, but it was topic specific for the training. And we heard some tidbits about each other. So that's interesting to learn. I'm glad. I'm honored and humbled to have been part of that experience with you.
Thank you, Gabe. Yeah, certainly.
And likewise, it was a very special time for me because it was all new. The language and recovery coaching kind of concept, that there's different pathways to recovery and the different people that were in that room that day. So yeah, it was a significant training in my life as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really taught me that, because I'm an AA'er for life, but there's more than one way, and there's more to recovery than just sitting in the rooms. And there's even beyond just going out and helping people. It even goes beyond that. It's education, it's prevention, it's, we do a lot of different things. So, yeah. But I'm really interested to hear what happened. So where did you grow up at? Because I hear the accent.
Yeah, it's funny because when I go back home to New York, so there's that answer. But they say I have a Midwestern accent now.
Okay.
I don't because I guess I say you all now and then. I'll say you all, but out here in Colorado, I'll say going down to the water from my father.
Yeah.
And they say, where are you? Are you from back east? So, but yeah, man, I grew up on Long Island, about 45, 50 minutes outside of Manhattan. Suburbia, middle class. My parents were not alcoholics, not drug addicts. But I had siblings that were partying, they were older than me, but kind of grew up like finding my sister's weed and I had this brother, a half brother that lived in Florida, and he'd only come up like every couple of years, you know. So I just remember he's 10 years older than me too. So I just remember being, I was like 6 or 7.
Yeah, the cool old
and
brother.
my dad, you know, sold insurance and wore a suit every day. And, you know, very, very, you know, grew up. He was 40 years older than me. So he was born in the 30s, you know. So, and here comes this guy with like muscles and driving a Chevelle with big tires on the back and gold chains, you know. And I was like, oh, that's my brother, you know. And but they were in the partying, you know, and I wanted to be just like him, you know. So, but in my house, you know, just a quick little background. I grew up in a Jewish household, Reformed Judaism. We didn't go to temple, but, you know, we celebrated the holidays very laid back, you know, got together with another Jewish family that were friends with my parents. But all my grandparents were Holocaust survivors.
Wow.
And my grandmother was pretty traumatized. And my mother, I didn't know all this until I knew they were Holocaust survivors, but I didn't know that my mom had anxiety disorder, and that for a couple years, my grandmother had to come up and take care of me because my mom was too sick. There was some medication that she needed that wasn't approved at the time by the FDA. But when I was probably in 3rd or 4th grade, they got her straightened out on her meds. So like there wasn't alcohol or you know, physical abuse or drug addiction, but I just remember like my house I just remember calling it weird. It was just kind of, my mom I'd cut my knee and my mom would be crying and I'd be consoling her.
Yeah.
Like she, you know, and I was taking care of her a lot, but didn't understand why. You know? And so I grew, you know, so it was a pretty decent childhood, safe neighborhood, you know, and like I said, my father sold insurance for Prudential and, you know, I had all my basic needs, but I started smoking pot when I was about 13. And there was a person in my neighborhood that I looked up to that reminded me a lot of my brother that I didn't see very often. And, you know, he had the new Corvette and, you know, he was a big guy, muscle guy like my brother. And I wanted to be like
what
that.
You wanted.
Yeah. And then I found out that he had that fancy sports car and that race boat and all those toys. He was only about 24. Was because he was selling cocaine. And so then another friend in my neighborhood started selling cocaine, and I tried it when I was 15 and fell in love with it. And then I learned how to make money selling it. And that same year I got arrested. We were just messing around. It was with one of those pump air rifles. But we were on my friend's roof, and we shot a guy that was driving. We were trying to shoot the sides of trucks that were going by. And I was walking home, and all of a sudden there was a helicopter flying overhead, and a SWAT team. They had dogs, and I was like, "What's going on?" They said there's a sniper in the woods, man.
Oh my
God!
God!
Up there shooting cars. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Me and my friend just had the BB gun out, you know, and so that was my first kind of taste with the law. Me and my friend were just bragging about it the next day in school. Like,
I'm sure you were,
like kids, you know, and just not thinking anybody would tell on us, right? Well, the next day there were detectives in my living room. They just needed to tell the media that it was 2 kids with a pellet gun, not a sniper trying to kill people. But, you know, my mom was pretty shameful. It was in the newspapers. I was a juvenile, so it wasn't made public. But it really, like, estranged us. And it kind of gave me that, you know, I was arrested and I'm selling cocaine. And I was rolling with you know, older people. And I kind of, it went right to my head, Dion, just to be, you know, to keep it real, like 15-year-old kid. And And
you were the shit, man.
Parties and some of the older jocks, it was like, dude, if you put your hands on me, you're done, because you know who I'm friends with,
And that's power, man. That's power.
When you're a kid. And then Scarface came out, I grew up in the 80s, man, right? So we're talking like 1984, 85, 86. And then that was kind of the era of John Gotti, in Astoria, Ozone Park in Queens. And I got a job at Gold's Gym when I was 18. I dropped out of high school. I was renting a house, selling coke. Had the crotch rocket and my Mr. T starter kit, like 3 gold chains. Right?
Oh no, I hope you have old pictures of that.
I'm scared to bust them out. But when you're 17 and you got $1,000 in your pocket, you think, I thought I was Scarface, and I started selling. I hooked up with some people. I started working at a Gold's Gym, and I started taking steroids when I was 18, and then I started smoking crack. And then I was going in Queens, Jamaica, Queens, Ozone Park, and I was selling like $500 silk dresses out of the back of my car.
Wow.
That may or may not have fallen off the backs of trucks going to Bloomingdale's or Macy's.
Certainly, yeah.
And I was just, and especially, and that's when I started smoking crack, and things were getting bad. I stole my dad's car. I owed people money. I started robbing drug dealers. Just everything that comes with being a junkie, a crackhead, I had dropped out of high school. I tried to escape. There's a couple drug dealers, it was looking, I was getting myself in wrecks, man.
Yeah.
And so I tried to join the Army.
Okay.
And I failed the drug test. That didn't work.
I failed the psychological test, so.
You can't do cocaine the night before going into.
No, you can't.
Test, right?
They'll probably figure it out.
So probably wasn't in the cards, but so I've got a wonderful uncle, mentor of mine, still to this day, always been in my corner, love him so much, and he's in Denver, Colorado.
Okay.
He said he heard what was going on, and he said, if you pack a duffel bag, would you get on a plane today? If I'll buy you a one-way ticket, but I got a friend that's in Narcotics Anonymous. You got to go to meetings every day. You got to stay sober. You got to get a job. And if you relapse, you're out on your own. I'm not flying you back home, but I'll buy you a ticket, and you can stay at my house, but you got to stay sober, and my buddy will come by every day and pick you up. And by the way, I should back up.
Okay.
That was after my parents had sent me to a 6-week inpatient program.
Okay.
In Pennsylvania. Because I told them once I couldn't get in the Army, I was scared. I owed thousands of dollars, and I didn't know.
How many people were after you?
Well, they weren't exactly like after me, but it was more like.
But if they saw you, they'd be wanting their money.
Yeah, and like real people I was running with were selling guns, and we were, collecting money from illegal gambling houses.
Okay.
And when I say collecting, we could have been robbing them, and I didn't know about it. I mean, I just kind of was along for the ride. Like I was getting into some dangerous, heavy, stupid stuff.
So you're putting yourself in really bad situations.
Yeah, and they use, they'll use people like that,
Certainly.
You're just, whether you live or die, they don't care. They're just all about getting paid, right?
Yep, manipulation.
I started getting scared, and just to keep it real, I was scared, and I didn't know how I was going to get out of it. So I went to rehab. I came back. I tried to I made things right with people, but then I got back on crack. Okay. And that's when I was running into the city and running with some heavy people. Yep. And really probably way in over my head and didn't realize it, but my uncle saw it. Like, I don't
Okay.
think I'd be here today if I didn't come to Colorado.
Now, because I kind of see it, do you feel like after you got out of treatment and you went back, do you feel like you just went hog wild at that point? Like it was just ride or fucking die or something?
Well, once I had that initial relapse, um, I felt like I was out of options. So what did I have to
Okay.
lose? Like, my
Fantastic.
parents
Oh,
are not
cool.
going to take me back in.
Yep.
That program, I mean, back then, now programs, are up to $100,000, but back then, 50 grand
Yeah.
was a lot. 1989,
Yeah.
so my
So
parents
you
had it
were,
with me.
so you
And
were what,
so,
19, 20 years old?
yeah, I
Okay.
was 89. I was like, I was going to be, yeah, I was 19 that year.
Okay.
And
Because we're the same age. So,
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
cool. So you got out to Denver.
Yeah, I got out to Denver. There was, you might be familiar with it, Dion. There was
Mhm.
an NA clubhouse behind 7-Eleven off of, I think it was 3rd and Broadway.
I don't remember it.
Yeah.
But
it
I'm
was a
not
lot-
an NA. I don't know where all the NA meetings are either.
Okay.
So,
I mean, it's significant in my mind because I was out there at that time. But
okay.
yeah, and it was an interesting story. I got a sponsor that actually my uncle lived in Englewood.
Okay.
And so I met a guy in there that just lived a couple houses down from my uncle, plus my uncle's friend who was driving me.
Okay.
And I stayed clean for 6 weeks. So remember, I'm 19 years old.
That's a long time.
Yeah, I got a clean slate, right? Nobody knows me. I'm living in a nice house, with my uncle, my aunt, my cousins that were younger than me. They took me in. They were very gracious. I got a job at Greenwood Athletic Center in DTC, where my aunt and uncle were members, and because I had the health club kind of background.
Yeah.
And so I started working there, met a girl, went to a party, and it was downtown Denver. I don't remember what street, but somehow I discovered East Colfax that night.
Uh-oh.
And so I got drunk, and I found crack cocaine on East Colfax. And didn't come home, or didn't go back to my uncle's house. Showed up about 3 days later, and it was 100% tough love. Like, we're not doing this. We know what you put your parents through. We had a deal. Here's your bag. See ya.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed with that girl for about a week. That didn't work out. And I just went back to, I was craving more dope, and I went back to East Colfax. So now, middle class suburbia, nice Jewish boy from Long Island is now homeless on East Colfax, Capitol Hill.
In 1989.
Yeah, summer of violence and stuff like that was going on, like early 90s.
Yep.
And yeah, I got my first experience of sleeping in a homeless shelter and eating cold pizza that was donated, and I just was basically just ostracized from my family.
Yeah.
Brother, sister, mother, father, aunt, uncle, just like nobody to call. And I didn't go back I called my sponsor one day, and his brother answered the phone. He's like, "Oh, I heard so much about you." And I had heard a lot about him. He had an issue with alcohol, and so I had heard a lot about him. And he said, "Yeah, my brother told me about you. I want to meet you." And I said, "I'm down. I'm on East Colfax. I'm broken, homeless, man." And he said, "Oh, let's go. I'll pick you up." And his brother wound up passing away. Went in for like a routine operation, and
oh man,
died on the table. That was my sponsor.
Yeah.
So now the other brother, who's not in recovery, picks me up.
Yeah.
And that started about, from 19 to the age of 25, or basically about 24 is when I met my first wife.
Okay.
I was on and off the streets of Colfax and Five
Okay.
Points. Those were my stomping grounds, Capitol Hill.
Yep.
Yeah, and that started my first misdemeanor arrests for trespassing, paraphernalia, getting being in raids at crack houses and all that kind of stuff. That started my introduction into the Denver City Jail and downtown detention center. But I hadn't caught a felony yet. And then I met my first, and that whole time I was employable if I could stay clean. I could always find a job. I worked at Bally's on Colorado Boulevard when that place opened in '93.
I remember
got into sales, got into management, got my first 2-week paycheck, and got back down to East Colfax and lost my job.
Yep.
And I got it. I'd always find a job. I'd always find a place to live, and then I would always screw it up because I would take off.
As soon as Friday comes and I had that cash in my hand, I was unstoppable.
Well, that was it. That was my cycle. And you almost get like this sick sense of confidence that I can lose everything because I've done this before. Yeah. I know it's going to suck for like 2 weeks. I'm going to be jonesing and it's going to suck and I'm going to be broke and I'll be sleeping on somebody's couch. But within a week, I'll find a job and somehow I'll be back on my feet. And this time it'll be different. You tell yourself, but it's never different if you don't do anything to change, right? If you don't do something different.
Yeah.
So that was my life for a couple years, couple stays in the county jail, city jail, that kind of stuff. And I kind of got into like the adventure of it as far as just, no responsibility, no mail, no job, nobody to answer to.
Yeah.
I learned how to rob, steal, hustle on the streets. And, you'd have a couple. I know 2 nights a week, I could get this dude to party and stay at that house. I'd have a girl over at this house, and I didn't really need a place to stay.
Yeah.
Then I met my first wife who lived over off of Federal Boulevard. I was dating a stripper who lived with her sister, and then her sister was a stripper.
We all know the rule.
Who was back from Vegas and had a baby. But we decided to stay together, and within 5 months, that little baby was calling me dad, and that's actually, he's my son. I adopted him into my heart. So we got married after 5 months. And I was still doing it was the first time, really, that baby, my son, Austin, man, he I had that, I loved her too. Don't get me wrong, but I would take off and do what I do as a drug addict. She'd be mad, kick me out, but that baby always gave me unconditional love. He didn't know what I was doing. He just happened to see me. And so for the first time in my life, Dion, since I was separated and ostracized from my family.
Since you were 19.
Yeah, man, I got this angel. The viewers can't see it, but the angel on my neck, because I used to call my 2 sons my angels, because I believe like he saved my life, man, because I started getting into dealing in Denver, and my wife at the time had a sister that lived up here on the Western Slope in Glenwood Springs, and I didn't know where her or the baby were for like a couple weeks.
Wow.
And then I found them. They were up here, and she said, if you want to keep this together, like you got to move up here. That's how I got introduced to church. She was going to church.
Cool.
And I didn't really, I didn't know anything about Christianity. I was just like, okay, like whatever you want me to say or do, I'm down. I just don't want to lose my wife. I was in love with her.
Yeah.
I loved
trying
her.
to do the right thing as a man. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a very dysfunctional relationship.
Yeah.
And bless her heart, she was good to me. I moved up here. I didn't know how to read a tape measure. But I got a job.
You just built a freaking.
I got a job as a carpenter's helper.
Good for you, man.
Bought some tools and started learning a trade. And then I discovered working on these multi-million-dollar houses up in Aspen. Now, mind you, I was only making $13 an hour, but that was back like in 95, 96.
Yeah, that's pretty good money back then.
Yeah, it was pretty good, you know, for a knucklehead, right?
Yeah.
And I started going to the bars up by Aspen, though, after work. And then I discovered, wow, there's cocaine all over this place. It wasn't crack, it was powder, but it was everywhere.
Welcome to Aspen.
Yeah.
A lot of drugs in Aspen.
I got totally tweaked out one night. One night turned into like 3 nights.
Yep.
I didn't know the cocaine that I was doing was cut with methamphetamine. I was hallucinating. I thought the DEA was after me. And in the middle of town one day in beautiful Aspen, Colorado, with tourists from all over the world, I just stopped and put my hands on top of my head because I thought there were snipers on top of the hotel. And I still had some coke in my pocket. And I thought if I reach into my pocket to get rid of it, they're going to blast me.
Yeah.
So I was so scared that I just stopped on the sidewalk and put my hands on top of my head. Well, the friendly Aspen Police Department comes rolling by, and I'll never forget, the officer said, excuse me, sir, is there any reason why you're standing there with your hands on top of your head? And I go, come on, man, you know what the fuck's going on. I go, it's because I got this cocaine in my pocket. And he said, you have cocaine? I said, yes, sir. He goes, do I have permission to search you? I said, yes, sir. Just take me to jail and let's get this over with.
Nope.
And so the next day in the Aspen Times, it said, man gets wish, goes to jail. So that's how I got my first felony. There's another piece of the puzzle for you, Dion.
Yeah.
They were laughing at me in court.
I'm sure that they I'm sure it wasn't funny to you then, but
that shows the insanity, right?
It does. I mean, okay, that's twice now. Now you've been on TV and in the newspaper.
Right. So now my wife at the time was pregnant with my second son.
Okay.
Who I adore, as well. And he was a blessing, and he was totally planned. Like, we wanted to give our first son a little brother. And I was super excited. And now I have a felony case and I'm in jail. Probably, if you're going to go to jail anywhere in America, Aspen's probably the place to go. Fully carpeted, coffee machine, you know. So I had it pretty good. But long story short, just to fast forward, they let me out on a PR bond.
Okay.
I violated that probation 5 times, took off from a halfway house.
Okay.
So that was 1996 when I caught the case. By late 1997, I violated 5 times.
Wow.
I was back before the judge, and I got sentenced to DOC for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
It was for less than half gram of cocaine, but you know, he's like, I gave you every opportunity not to go to prison.
Judges do not like it when you waste their time. Yeah. They do not like that. Yeah.
Needless to say, I put my first wife through hell and back.
God bless her heart, man.
What's that?
And I said, God bless her heart, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. She's been only a wonderful mother to my 2 sons.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
thank goodness she was there for them despite my behavior.
Yeah.
She divorced me going into prison, or while I was in prison. So the first time, 1998, I went to Buena Vista.
Okay.
They call Gladiator School. And I was in the buildings for a while. And when I got out, you know, I was close to 30 years old. I was probably, almost 30. And I paroled, you know, I was back on the streets, and parents tried to help me out a little bit. That didn't work out. I relapsed. I went back to prison. Basically, fast forward from 98 till 2011, I was in and out of prison 7 times.
Okay.
So 2011, and I was running hard. It was just like, I kind of just accepted the fate that I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison or OD, on the streets.
Yeah, you were just going to be a punk for the rest of your freaking life. You were just going to, I get it.
I was selling drugs to survive, but never just like street level, just enough so I could always have a hotel room and, car service but of course I would always blow that. And I was on the streets, man. I stayed at Crossroads. I stayed at Jesus Saves. I hung out at the Triangle.
Okay.
I did all that, man. And not like off it. Like, I could go down there now and people would recognize me and I would know people. Probably. Yeah. Unfortunately, some people are still out there, right?
Yep.
So, and being in and out of prison, when you get out, you see kind of the same people on the streets too.
Yes.
So anyways, so I kind of did the whole Canyon City tour. I was in a lot of different facilities.
Wow.
And 2011. Oh, by the way, I should just add that, during that time I had I dug in deep to the Bible. And every time I thought I had it, I'd get released. I'd be on the streets and I'd relapse. And I just couldn't figure out what I was missing. Sure. I was still struggling with what faith is, at least for me.
Okay.
And I had an escape case, and I went to Fort Lyons Correctional Facility where they had a special medical needs unit. It was kind of like territorial. They had most of the people. It was a hospice unit. It was for people with disabilities. Okay. People that needed to be out of general population. Yep. Maybe they were in wheelchairs or whatever it may be. And they had a nursing program. And so I did the nursing program. And then I worked for close to 2 years as a nurse's assistant in there, taking care of sick inmates. Yeah. Wow. Those were two, Dion, seriously, that was like 2006, 2008. Okay. Those were two of the best years of my life. Yeah. Because I was of service. Exactly. I was taking care of people.
Felt good about yourself. We talked about that a little bit earlier too, right before we were coming on. You had a sense of accomplishment. You were being accountable. And that right there can change things for you.
Yeah, give you, that sense of purpose. And it was just real interesting, man. It really woke me up to, I actually wrote an article about it and about how do I want to, it made me ask myself, how do I want to spend the rest of my days? Yeah. Because I got close to a couple men in there, taking care of them. Yeah. One guy had a brain tumor. I mean, he was gone like in 2 months. You come into work and there's a black curtain over his cell door. Yeah. They're just, his body's in there and they're just waiting for the morgue to come in from the town to pick it up. Yeah. So I saw, one guy had, hepatitis, liver disease, all sorts of brain cancers. But there was one man that just had dementia. He was 86 and been in prison his whole life. And I take him out in his wheelchair around the yard and stuff like that. It really touched my soul. And I was praying with guys and that was like a turning point in my life. But I had gotten out that time. I guess it was like about 2008, 2009. I went to the Stout Street Clinic. I was homeless. I was down at Crossroads. Okay. I went to Stout Street Clinic, group therapy, AA meetings, church, and I'm duly diagnosed, bipolar, PTSD. I was on medications for a while. And then I got a housing voucher through Stout Street, so I had a place in 5 Points. But then I met a woman from Stout Street who was a drug addict too, and violated my parole, went back to prison. So I had I had those 2 years in Fort Lyons and about another year clean. So I had about 3 years clean. Okay. And I just couldn't believe I was back in prison. That was 2011. They sent me back for the last 5 weeks of my parole, man. Wow. And I just thought, I don't ever want to do this again. I can't believe, and it was over you know, I wanted affection. I wanted sex. I wanted, I compromised my recovery
Yeah.
for all that.
Yeah.
I went against all my counselors' recommendations. Don't
Yep.
get in a relationship. Don't do this. Don't do
And
that.
they told you why. You know, they're like,
Totally.
you don't have anything to offer this person. Why are you? Yeah.
Totally. You know, so lesson learned. You know,
Yeah.
I joked today that I'm a slow learner. I had to go to prison 7 times
Me
to figure it
too.
out. But
Yep.
yeah, fast forward. So that was 2011. My 2 sons, who basically was not there for most of their life, were 15 and 17 by that time.
Wow. Okay.
And living in Glenwood Springs.
Okay.
And I was off paper. I was off parole for the first time in like over a decade.
Wow.
And I was homeless, 40 years old, homeless, broke. And my mom said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to, my Austin's about to graduate high school and Alex is in 10th grade. I want to do everything I can to try to rekindle a relationship with them." I said,
Yep.
"I don't care if I got to live in the woods, but I'm not staying in Denver. I can't do this again."
Yeah,
I know
not
what'll
in Denver.
happen.
Yeah.
And it's not Denver. It was me, but I get
I get it,
just had
but
that
still,
cycle.
but why not give yourself every chance that you can get to
Yeah,
be
amen.
successful? So yeah.
So there was a hostel up here, and by that time I had gotten on SSI.
Okay.
I got through the prison system. They got me because of my meds and because I'd been out of the workforce for so long. I worked with Department of Vocational Rehab, so I came to Glenwood Springs, broke and homeless, 40 years old. I stayed at a hostel. Bed was like $35 a night.
Yep.
And I went to 2-hour group therapy twice a week for duly diagnosed group.
Yep.
Individual counseling. Went to church. Was on fire for the Lord. And and the common bond they had. My boys were into boxing and wrestling, and so there was a kickboxing class at this local gym.
Okay.
Now I had taken a Krav Maga class. Krav Maga is a Israeli self-defense, hand-to-hand combat that they teach the Israeli military.
Yep.
I actually started that in Denver.
Uh-huh.
The last time, right before that year I was clean going to Stout Street Clinic, I wanted like a healthy outlet, and I always had this dream of being a black belt as a kid. It just wasn't in the cards for me. So I had about 6 weeks of classes in Denver, and then I moved up to Glenwood.
Okay.
So I saw this kickboxing class, and I asked my boys if I paid for the class and bought them some gear, would they come hang out? I was just trying to get them to hang out. I mean,
yeah,
you can imagine they don't want to hang out with their dad. They got girlfriends, and, and you know, they're trying to get their first vehicles and all that stuff. So, but we started training together and working out, and that was, you know, there's a lot of water under the bridge, but that was the beginning of rekindling the relationship, which was real powerful for me. And I wanted to pursue Krav Maga, and there was nowhere to take classes up here, there was nobody teaching it. And having been in the health and fitness industry for so long, I thought if I could figure out how to get a certification, an instructor certification, and find an organization that'll work with me, even though I'm a felon, because they do gun disarms. Part of the black belt test is getting your concealed carry and knowing how to handle a firearm. So if you take a firearm from somebody, you know how to use it.
Yep.
And that, you know, as a felon, I can't possess a firearm, but I found an organization. I was out of state. And so through Voc Rehab, I got a grant to buy tools. I went back to work as a carpenter, started my own little construction company, was framing houses. And then the money that I made from that, I flew to Kentucky, Texas, Florida to pursue my Krav Maga training. And
Good for you, man.
And I started a class. I specifically started a class here in Glenwood Springs once I got my first instructor cert, just so I would have, it wasn't about the money. It was just so I would have other people to train with so I could get better to get to the next level.
Yep.
And so I started a class. It started first in my backyard, and then I started at the community center. And I started a logo and got on Facebook. And then my instructor made an exception. The only thing I didn't do in the training was the actual shooting part
Okay.
on the range, but he let me do the law enforcement officer Krav Maga instructor training as a felon. So
Cool.
I went to Florida and trained with all these cops for about a week. And then in 2016, at 46 years old, I got my black belt.
Wow.
And
Congratulations. Great job.
Thanks. And with that, I went to 2015. Some guys in Argentina saw me. I got on a book cover, a Krav Maga book cover with my instructor. And so I worked out a deal. That was an adventure of a lifetime. I do not speak Spanish. My host did not speak English. And I told him, I said, if you buy me a ticket, they didn't really have too much money either. The economy was different down there, obviously, and times were tough. And I said, if you buy me a ticket, I'll come down there. I'll do it for free. Just get me there. And they did. And I slept on this kid's mother's house, and I did a 5-hour weapon defense seminar and did a 4-day instructor course. And it got me into the Martial Arts Hall of Fame in Argentina in 2015. Oh. And then, 2019, last year, I got inducted into the United States Martial Arts Hall of Fame. And
wow.
Now I have 10 affiliates across the United States, and I have 2 in Europe, Sweden and Netherlands. I've traveled quite a bit teaching.
You are on fire, Gabe. That is so awesome. And you've written a book too, haven't you?
Yeah. So thanks.
Yeah, might as well plug it. We're on here, man.
It's called Pit Bull Bouncer. Like the pit bull. Yeah, man. I tried to get a job. I wanted to be a bodyguard, and I thought maybe with my black belt in Krav Maga I would open some doors. Well, nobody would hire me. No security company in their right mind is going to hire a 3-time felon that's been in prison 7 times. But I finally found, it's a numbers game, right? You knock on enough doors. If anything, I can say that, like, perseverance, tenacity, just never give up. That there's always, and today I'm preaching, and it's like, God opens up doors man will tell you won't open to you. God can open up anything. Mm-hmm. And so I found a former police officer that was from back east, living in Colorado.
Okay.
And he's like, he goes, I need somebody that can regulate. I need somebody that can get down. I don't care if you're a felon. I have this nightclub down in Grand Junction. That's like Roadhouse, man. And if you're willing to go down there,
Roadhouse.
Yeah, he told me it was only $13 an hour, man, and it's 70 miles each way from my house.
Wow.
But I did it.
Yeah, because that's what you wanted to do. Yeah, that's how you get
it on my resume, right?
Yeah.
Because I was working full-time construction. I would drive on the weekends down to this bar, bounce. We were pretty much fighting every weekend, but it was good Facebook material too. So I wrote. They called me the Pit Bull because I was pretty aggressive. I was much more aggressive back then than I am today. And so it's called the Pit Bull Bouncer nightclub for nightclub managers and security professionals. You can find it on Amazon. Gabe Cohen, Pit Bull Bouncer. So I did Surviving the Bar Fight seminar in the Netherlands last year. Some guys flew me over there for that. Yeah, and so but a couple years ago, Dion, thanks for the plug, man.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, started feeling empty inside. I was working at nightclubs, high end, like, celebrities, rappers. When they come to town, they'd call me. I've worked some high end tables.
Cool.
And cocaine was everywhere, and I started functionally using a couple years ago.
Okay.
About 4 years ago, again, and I was trying to get this book published. The book came out in 2018, and I knew I had a problem. I knew it was getting the better of me again.
Yep.
I knew it was getting better of me again, but I didn't want to quit the nightclub. I was making really good money. I mean, I told you I started at $13 an hour, driving 70 miles, and I had people handing me $100 bills some nights, working these tables and stuff. plus I was I charge. I have a much different rate now because I'm internationally recognized in the martial arts community.
Good for you, man.
But I say all that to say that I used, so this was back like late, early 2018. I relapsed and my kidney shut down and I was hospitalized for 6 days.
Okay.
I had rhabdomyolysis, which is toxicity in your blood, and it shuts down your kidney function.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know if I was going to walk out of the hospital, man. They were waiting to see if it would function by itself. And it was pretty scary. And I had just volunteered. I just got accepted as a volunteer with the Garfield County Sheriff's Department to come into the jail and I started a ministry called Kings and Priests Ministry. You can find that on Facebook as well. About 2.5 years ago. But I was still working at the nightclub.
Okay.
And I was still on that fence. And I knew I couldn't be on both sides of the fence. And I feel like God put me in the hospital and said, like, this is your last shot, man.
This is it.
This is it. Like, you need to choose.
Yeah.
So got back into recovery. And now I'm in Eagle County Jail, Garfield County Jail with my Bible study weekly. And I discovered the recovery. I wanted to work with the recovery court clients, and they told me, go to this peer coaching thing, this recovery coach training. And that's where we met.
Yeah.
And I got the recovery coach certification. I've been volunteering. So I took 2 years off. I quit doing security work. I quit construction. All I was doing was volunteer work and just doing my Krav Maga at night.
Okay.
I have a dojo here too in Glenwood Springs.
All right.
So I was teaching classes at night. I was doing fundraisers. I was part-time. I was teaching 4th and 5th graders at one of the elementary schools. I just had a couple part-time gigs and some private clients. It was enough to keep me afloat, but I was doing volunteer work in the jails. And then also there's a nonprofit organization, Wages, that was working out of the parole department here at the Western Slope. So I was volunteering for them, taking guys to get their medications, taking them shopping for clothes or tools, and just being of service. I really found like, I just have this call. I just felt this calling to be of service. And when I'm of service to other people, it makes me feel good about me, and it gives meaning to my past. I can share my experience with others and let them know that there's hope, that this is doable.
Yeah.
You know, and doing the volunteer work at the parole department, I found out they lost their treatment provider right before COVID hit.
Ouch.
So like, you know, dozens of people on parole in this county without substance use disorder classes or one-on-one counseling. And I asked the parole department, how does one apply to become a treatment provider? The parole manager was very gracious and walked me through the application process.
Wow.
And believe it or not, I am an approved treatment provider today for Colorado Department of Corrections. And I have the entire caseload for Garfield County.
Wow. I'm going to give a round of applause on that one, man. That is fucking cool.
Yeah, I'm not a CAC 2. I can't teach the classes, but I found a CAC 2 in my AA group.
Yeah.
I said, dude, I need a teacher. I can pay you so much a night. And I've since hooked up with another company. We spoke about this before, but now I'm able to provide Medicaid. And so now I can provide my recovery coach services through my clients at the parole department. I pay somebody to teach the parole department classes. Basically, I just kind of harness the business and put it together. But yeah, what a blessing to be of service now. So county jails, community corrections, all that.
That is fantastic. And that is, you know, it's so neat because, you know, God, how do I say that? Watching somebody go from, or hearing somebody go from
Dion.
being on the streets.
Literally, right?
Literally.
Yeah,
I mean,
thank you,
every
Dion. It
night
means a
for
lot.
years is now a stand-up person in the community. Okay.
And I keep it real, dude. I tell them, like, I made changes in 2011. I decided I was going to do everything I could to change my life. Now, does
Yeah.
that mean I've been sober since 2011? No. And I think there's power. There's great power in sharing your brokenness and your humility. And when I
Yes.
go into jail, I tell them, like, I was already approved as a volunteer and I relapsed. So I keep it real. I let them know that, like, I'm back in recovery the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And that, and sometimes if you relapse in the past, I would just give up everything and say, well, I
Yeah.
guess this isn't meant to be.
Yeah.
And, you gotta pick yourself. You have to have that support system in place, though. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have been able to do it if I hadn't done that work.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, man, thanks for your kind words. Thank you.
Most certainly. And thank you again for being on the show and sharing your story.
I know I talked for a while. Thanks.
No, that's why I love that. That's why we love this open forum, though. You never know. I mean, some people's stories are 20 minutes, some people, and then you got old farts like us, and
We've
we
been
did a
around,
little,
dude.
bit more. So,
Well, you can chop it up any way you feel fit, too.
right.
That's fine.
So yeah, thank you for being on, and thank you everybody for listening and being a part of. There were a couple of things that got caught in here. Number one, sometimes we have people in our lives that love us until we learn to love ourselves, and sometimes those are ex-wives. They might be different people. Being honest with other people with where you were at when you were saying that at the end, I believe that's, we have to be honest with ourselves, and when we're honest with ourselves, and we can be honest with other people. But more than anything, I hope everybody got hope out of this, knowing that you can come back and that you can be a success and you can be a miracle. And by listening to these stories, hopefully you can avoid some of the mistakes we made. So all right, guys, that will be it for today. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of. Gabe, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dion.
Most certainly. I love you all. Peace out and have a day.